My name is Marissa Hale, and I'm 31 years old. I've lived with a severe, lifelong tree nut allergy for as long as I can remember, an allergy so intense that every allergist I've ever had has used the same phrase. This is not an intolerance. This is life-threatening. When I was 7, I spent 2 nights in a hospital bed after someone's homemade birthday cupcakes had walnut oil in the frosting. When I was 19, one accidental bite of a salad contaminated with almond slivers sent me right back to the ER, gasping for air while nurses pushed epinephrine into my system. Those moments stay with you. They shape you. They make you cautious, vigilant, maybe even a little paranoid. Not because you're dramatic, but because you remember what it was like to feel your throat closing around your own breath. I carry 2 EpiPens everywhere. I know which restaurants can handle strict allergen protocols. I know how to ask the right questions, when to decline a dish, when to step away. For most of my adult life, I've managed all of this quietly, calmly, without apology. And then I met Evan Mercer. I was 29, he was 30, and we met at a friend's rooftop party in late spring, the kind of night where the sky still glowed lavender long after sunset. Evan was charming in a way that made you feel seen. He had this gentle, subtle charisma, like he wasn't trying to impress anyone but somehow still did. We clicked quickly. Too quickly, maybe. We moved in together after 8 months. I'd never moved that fast before, but he made it feel natural, like the logical next step. When I told him about my allergy on our second date, because I always bring it up early, he'd been understanding, even thoughtful. "Thanks for telling me," he'd said, touching my hand lightly. "We'll work around it. No big deal." And for the first year, he kept that promise. He'd ask waitstaff about cross-contamination. He'd double-check ingredient lists. He even helped clean out his pantry when I first started staying over, tossing anything that said may contain traces of tree nuts. I'd been grateful. I'd told him so. But 6 months ago, things changed. Not dramatically at first, just a comment here, a sigh there. "Are you sure you're that allergic? Have you tried building up a tolerance?" My coworker said most people exaggerate their allergies. Small seeds, tiny cracks. But once you notice a crack, you can't unsee it. Then it became annoyance. Visible, audible, humiliating. "You're making this difficult, Marissa. People think you're being extra. You act like one whiff of a cashew will kill you." Every time he said something like that, I reminded him, calmly, what anaphylaxis meant. I even showed him my medical alert bracelet again, like I hadn't already done that dozens of times over 2 years. He'd nod, pretend to understand, then repeat the same comments days later. But the real breaking point, the moment the ground beneath our life split, happened 3 days ago. Evan had invited his friends over, Melissa, Jenna, and Caroline. They were perched on the couch, drinking wine and nibbling snacks while I worked in our bedroom, door half closed. The apartment was small, the walls were thin, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But I heard everything. Melissa started it. "So, how's Marissa doing with her whole allergy situation?" I froze. Evan laughed. A laugh I'd never heard directed at me before. "Oh my God, the allergy. Honestly, I swear she exaggerates half of it." My heartbeat went cold. Jenna chimed in, voice dripping with curiosity. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Evan continued, "if it was really this fatal, wouldn't I have seen something by now? She avoids everything. She acts like a walnut could just leap across the table and murder her." Another laugh. "She wants pity. It's exhausting." The room erupted in giggles. Caroline added, "My cousin used to pretend gluten made her sick. Turns out she just wanted attention from her boyfriend." "Exactly," Evan said. "Marissa's the same. Everything revolves around her condition. Restaurants, parties. She makes a scene every time." A scene. He said it like I'd asked for applause while fighting to stay alive. Melissa's voice floated through the wall. "Have you confronted her about it?" "I've hinted," he replied. "But she has all these medical records like she's building a case file. Honestly, I think she read something online and decided it made her special." More laughter. Sharp, cutting, casual. The kind of laughter people use when the target isn't in the room. Except I was. I sat frozen, staring at the door, at the wall, at the life I thought I understood. The man I'd trusted. The man who slept next to me. The man who said he loved me. He thought I was faking a medical condition. He thought I wanted sympathy. He thought I was embarrassing. Each word carved into me like a blade. I didn't walk out there. I didn't confront him. I didn't even move. I just sat in silence, not because I was scared, but because something inside me had gone still, cold, detached. I listened until the conversation drifted into trivial gossip, but the damage had already rooted itself deep. Later that night, when he came to bed, he kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. I answered questions about his day as if mine hadn't shattered. I matched his tone, his rhythm, his ease, because I already knew something he didn't. When respect dies, the relationship doesn't die with it. It rots. Quietly, invisibly, completely. I stared at the ceiling long after he fell asleep, listening to his breathing, wondering if I'd ever trust him again. I already knew the answer. But I didn't want to fight. I wanted clarity. I wanted truth laid bare. So I decided on something better than confrontation. Something undeniable. Something he would have to face alone, in silence, the same way he'd made me sit through his laughter. A small bag, a nightstand, 15 years of medical proof. A reminder that my life was not a punchline. Not to him, not to anyone. As I lay there, eyes open in the dark, one thought kept repeating itself like a heartbeat I couldn't quiet. He didn't misinterpret my allergy. He dismissed my existence. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to Evan, listening to the soft, steady rhythm of his breathing, while my own felt shallow and wrong, like it didn't belong to the same life I'd been living that morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his laugh again. She wants pity. It's exhausting. It's funny how quickly your mind rewrites history when it finally has context. All the eye rolls, the sighs, the way he'd say, "Do you have to make this a production?" when I'd ask a waiter about ingredients. They'd all felt like little paper cuts before. Annoying, hurtful, but survivable. Now, with one conversation through a thin wall, they weren't random moments anymore. They were a pattern, a mindset, a truth he hadn't said out loud to me, but had no problem sharing with his friends. In the morning, I moved on autopilot. Shower, coffee, makeup. He shuffled into the kitchen, hair a mess, voice still thick with sleep. "Morning," he said, leaning in to kiss my temple. I let him. I didn't flinch. I didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing anything had changed. "Morning," I replied, taking a sip of coffee. My voice sounded disturbingly normal. He chatted about a client meeting, traffic, a podcast he'd started on the commute the day before. I hummed and nodded in the right places, the practiced rhythm of a woman who'd learned to stay polite even while something inside her was peeling away. When he left, the apartment finally fell quiet. Just me, the hum of the fridge, and the faint buzzing in my ears. I didn't cry. Instead, I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and sent an email. My allergist, Dr. Patel, had been treating me for over a decade. When I left her office 15 years ago, after that second ER visit, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You need partners in your life who take this as seriously as you do." At the time, I'd thought she meant future doctors, co-workers, maybe a boss. Now I understood she meant something else entirely. "Of course, Marissa," she said when I explained what I needed. "We have extensive records, skin tests, blood tests, treatment notes. You know your allergy is severe." "I know," I said. "I just need everything, in writing, all of it together." There was a pause on the line. Is someone questioning it? The answer lodged in my throat. Something like that. She didn't push. "Come in tomorrow. We'll compile a full report." The next day, I sat across from her in the familiar exam room, hands folded too tightly in my lap as she flipped through my file. "We have 15 years of data," she said, tapping the folder. "Multiple positive IgE tests, documented anaphylactic reactions, ER reports. There's no doubt about the severity of your allergy, Marissa. This isn't in your head." "I know it's not in my head," I said quietly. "I just need it to not be in anyone else's either." Her expression softened. "I'll prepare a comprehensive report. You'll have it by this afternoon." By 4 o'clock, I was holding a 10-page document. Letterhead, medical jargon, lab values, incident summaries, her professional assessment. This patient has a severe, life-threatening tree nut allergy consistent with anaphylaxis. Strict avoidance and emergency preparedness are medically necessary. I had it notarized. On the drive home, I detoured to a medical supply store. The clerk helped me find a training kit, an EpiPen trainer, clearly labeled non-functional, and some educational pamphlets about anaphylaxis. I held the little blue and orange trainer in my hand for a moment, thumb tracing the plastic. It looked so harmless, so simple. A fake version of the thing I carried every day in case my body decided to betray me again. "This is the one they use in schools, right?" I asked. "Yeah," the clerk said, "to teach people how to respond to severe allergies." "To teach them," I repeated softly. "Right." Evan worked late that night. I had the apartment to myself. Just me, a stack of papers, an old shoebox from my closet, and the photos I'd never shown him. I spread everything out on the dining table. The hospital bracelet from when I was 7. The ER intake wristband from 19. The puffy, tear-streaked face of a little girl with a swollen throat and fear in her eyes. The exhausted college sophomore with an oxygen mask and IV lines in both arms. I slid each photo into a clear sleeve, placed them behind the corresponding sections of the report. I added the blood test printouts, the chart showing my IG levels spiking like a warning alarm. Last, I tucked the EpiPen trainer into the bag beside the pamphlets. Then I picked up a pen and wrote a short, neat note on plain white paper. Since you think I'm exaggerating this for attention, here's 15 years of documentation that says otherwise. The EpiPen trainer is so you can educate yourself on what I carry every day to stay alive. Read this before you laugh about my condition again. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I placed everything into a small, simple gift bag, one of the leftover ones from a friend's birthday, and set it carefully on his nightstand. Then I carried my pillow and a blanket into the guest room. By the time Evan came home, the apartment lights were low. I listened as he dropped his keys into the bowl by the door, toed off his shoes, and walked down the hall. "Maris," he called, voice casual. "You still up?" "In the guest room," I replied, keeping my tone flat, neutral. There was a slight pause. "Okay, I'll come say goodnight in a minute." I stared at the ceiling, muscles taut, every nerve straining toward the sound of the bedroom door opening down the hall. Silence. Then a soft, confused, "Huh?" A rustle as he picked up the bag. The faint crinkle of tissue paper. The shift of weight as he sat on the edge of the bed. More silence, thicker this time. Pages turned. 1, 2, 3. The tiny, sharp intake of breath when he hit the photos. I could almost see his face as he looked at the 7-year-old version of me on that hospital bed, lips swollen, eyes glassy. The 19-year-old with the oxygen mask. The lab results with my name printed clearly at the top. The quiet stretched so long, I started to wonder if time itself had slowed down. Then came the knock. "Marissa?" His voice, soft, tentative, ironic, coming from a man who hadn't been tentative at all when he'd mocked me 2 days earlier. "Yes? Can we talk?" "I'm tired," I said. "Tomorrow." He hesitated. I could hear it in the way his hand shifted against the wood. "I saw what you left for me." "I know." Marissa, I need to explain." I let the anger stay cool. Cold anger is sharper. "There's nothing to explain. You were very clear on Tuesday." A beat of stunned silence. "You heard that?" "Every word," I said. "Melissa asked about my whole allergy situation. You laughed. You said I wanted pity. You said I was exhausting. Thin walls, Evan. You know that." Marissa, I didn't mean..." "You absolutely meant it," I cut in, still not raising my voice. People don't laugh that hard at things they don't believe. I heard his breath hitch. I was venting. I was frustrated. I didn't realize. "Frustrated by what?" I asked. "By me checking ingredients so I don't end up in the hospital? By me carrying EpiPens? By me trying not to die at dinner parties?" There was a small, broken sound on the other side of the door. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you please open the door so we can talk?" "Read the report," I said. "Look at the tests. Look at the pictures of me at 7 and 19. Read Dr. Patel's assessment, then decide if I'm just making a scene for attention." He didn't respond. I heard him shift, then footsteps retreating down the hall. I lay back on the guest bed, the quiet ringing in my ears louder than any argument could have been. For the first time since I was a child, strapped to a hospital gurney, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Not fear, not shame. Distance. Between me and him. Between the woman fighting for her breath and the man who thought watching her do it might be embarrassing. I closed my eyes and let that distance settle. Tomorrow he'd come with apologies. Tomorrow he'd have explanations. Tomorrow he'd promise to change. But tonight I had something more important than his regret. I had proof, and I had a locked door. The morning after the nightstand incident, I woke up in the guest room before sunrise. For a moment, in that groggy blur between sleep and consciousness, I forgot why I was there. Then I heard movement from the hallway, Evan walking lightly, avoiding creaky floorboards the way guilty people walk when they don't know how to enter a room they ruined. I stayed still and silent. Eventually, he left for work without knocking. I listened to the click of the door, the fading echo of his footsteps in the hallway, and let a long, steady breath out. It felt like the first uncluttered inhale I'd taken in months. Throughout the day, my phone lit up with his messages. 8:12 a.m. Evan. Did you read the whole report? I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. I want to talk tonight. 8:41 a.m. Evan. I didn't mean what I said. I swear. I was venting to the guys. I'm not even sure why he lied about that. It had been 3 women and a bottle of rosé. 9:27 a.m. Evan, please answer me. 12:55 p.m. Evan. I'm looking up anaphylaxis. I didn't know it was this severe. I'm so sorry. I want to do better. Let me fix this. I didn't reply until 5:07 p.m. Me. Did you read the entire report? His answer came within seconds. Evan. Yes, all of it. Marissa, I had no idea. Please come home. We need to talk. But there was nothing new to talk about. Only truths he'd been ignoring. When I got home, Evan was sitting on the couch with every document spread out on the coffee table. Medical records, photos, emergency notes, the EpiPen trainer sitting dead center like an accusation he couldn't explain away. His eyes were red, either from crying or from the weight of horror finally settling on him. Marissa, he said immediately, standing too quickly, I am so sorry. I read everything. I watched videos. I looked up how EpiPens work. God, I didn't know. You did know, I corrected calmly, removing my coat. I told you, multiple times. But you didn't believe me. I sat opposite him, crossing my legs. That's different. He swallowed hard. I thought maybe you were exaggerating. People exaggerate stuff. My medical condition isn't stuff, Evan. He nodded quickly, like he could shake this problem into submission. I know that now. I swear I do. I was ignorant. I was awful. But I can fix this. I'll learn everything. I'll be better. I want to be better. His desperation wasn't moving. It wasn't touching. It was exhausting. Ironically, the same word he'd used to describe me. Why? I asked. He blinked. What do you mean, why? Why do you suddenly want to be better? Because you got caught? I tilted my head. Because the thin walls finally worked against you instead of me? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. It was obvious. He was sorry for the result, not the belief. And apologies built on humiliation never last. The next few days were a strange limbo. Evan tiptoed around the apartment like he was trying not to disturb a sleeping animal. He overcorrected, constantly. He threw out every food item that even mentioned nuts. He researched allergen-free restaurants. He left sticky notes by the sink with reminders like wash knife thoroughly before cutting fruit. He was trying. He truly was. But intention doesn't erase disdain. Every time he hovered, every time he asked, "Is this safe for you?" I heard his voice from 2 days earlier, laughing with his friends about how dramatic I was. Every time he said, "I'm just trying to help," I heard, "She wants pity." Every time he touched my arm, I felt his sigh from that dinner party months ago when I declined a dessert and he muttered that I was embarrassing him. The human brain records betrayal more clearly than love. That weekend, Evan's mother called me. "Marissa, honey," she began in the gentle tone mothers reserve for delicate situations. "Evan told me there was a misunderstanding." I almost laughed. A misunderstanding? We weren't talking about forgetting to pay a bill. "No," I said softly. "It wasn't. He told me you left some kind of bag with medical things? Don't you think that was a little harsh?" "No," I replied. "What would you prefer I'd done? Eaten a nut and ended up in the ER to prove my point?" Silence. Then she sighed. "You're right. He was wrong, but he's devastated. People make mistakes." "This wasn't one mistake," I said. "This was months of dismissing a condition that almost killed me twice." More silence, and finally a quiet, "I understand." But I knew she didn't fully, and frankly, she didn't have to. This wasn't her relationship to salvage. 2 weeks passed. I stayed in the guest room. He stayed in the master. We orbited around each other like planets that had once shared a sun, but now spun separately, each on a lonely trajectory. He kept trying. I kept seeing the cold truth behind the trying. And trust? Trust doesn't regrow just because someone waters it. 6 weeks after the nightstand incident, we sat on the couch, our last real conversation. He looked tired. I probably did too. "Where do we go from here?" he asked. I stared at the coffee table between us, the one where his laughter had once echoed off wine glasses, the one where he'd spread my medical records like a crime scene he didn't recognize himself in. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "You spent 2 years with me. You knew about my allergy the whole time, and still, you thought I was faking it. What does that say about us?" "It says I was selfish and ignorant, but I've changed. I'm trying." "You're trying because you got caught," I said gently. If I hadn't overheard you, you'd still be rolling your eyes every time I asked about ingredients." He didn't argue. He couldn't. We both knew it was true. "Doesn't everyone deserve a second chance?" he whispered. "Sure," I said, "but not every relationship does." He closed his eyes and something inside him gave up. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly. We broke up 3 days later. Not with yelling, not with slammed doors or broken plates. Just a quiet acceptance that trust had shattered, and neither of us could glue it back together without cutting ourselves. He moved out. He cried while packing. I didn't, not because I didn't hurt, but because I'd already mourned the us that had existed before the thin walls told me the truth. A week later, he texted me, "Evan, saw a guy at Starbucks with a medical alert bracelet today. Made me think of you. Made me realize how many people I probably dismissed before understanding them. Thank you for teaching me. I'm sorry I learned too late." I read it, let the message sit like a stone in my chest. Then I set my phone down. I didn't reply, because I'm not his lesson. I'm not his redemption arc. I'm not the woman who nearly stopped breathing twice just so someone could learn empathy at her expense. I'm Marissa Hale, 31, severely allergic to tree nuts, single, alive, and finally breathing in a home where no one mocks the air I fight to keep. Better alone than with someone who thinks your survival is an inconvenience. And that finally is enough.